I'm Priscilla Barrera with the Investing News Network, and here with me today is Ken Hoffman, who's a senior expert at McKinsey. Ken, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so we're back in person at this year's Fast Markets Lithium Conference. What has been a major highlight for you so far?
Well, the lithium industry's been very interesting of late. We obviously have seen all-time record prices for lithium over the past few months. A huge debate among the Wall Street analysts: are prices going to come way down, or are prices going to maintain their high levels? That's something to watch. What I've been very interested in, and the two panels I will chair, are on new lithium technologies. How do we find and get more lithium at lower cost and still be environmentally friendly to this market? And then secondarily, recycling. Can we recycle all these batteries that we're putting into the marketplace? And one of the interesting things I heard that was quite amazing was Eric Norris. I was on a panel with him recently from Albemarle, and he said a company needs to double their production every 2 to 3 years for the next decade. It's an immense challenge that this industry is undergoing, and it's a challenge that we absolutely can't fail in. Because if we do, then global warming will get us. So that's something that I think conferences like this are absolutely critical for the industry.
We've seen obviously lithium prices rally in the past year. They're stabilizing a little bit right now. When you look at the overall lithium space, what do you think is the major risk this industry faces right now?
Well, look, prices went up a lot last year, almost 1,000%, so that's a lot. And the reason they went up a lot was demand for EVs just exploded. LFP batteries in China were up 170%, NMC batteries were up over 100%. No commodity can quickly react to that, and that's why we saw you have supply, you have demand, and you have price. There's no such thing as a long-term deficit. There could be a long-term surplus if you wanted to inventory it, but the idea that we're structurally going to have this long-term deficit, I hate when analysts say that because that's just physically impossible unless you have negative matter. But I think in a certain respect, I sort of fall between both camps of people who are super, super positive and super, super negative. And the reason being this: the world has a lot of lithium in it. Wherever you basically have a dead ocean, you're going to find a lot of lithium right there. And the world has a lot of dead oceans. So from a standpoint of could the Earth provide 10, 15, 20 times as much lithium a year than we do today? Yes. The bottleneck comes on the refining of that, putting up the refineries that can make the right qualities. And that is a capital issue. And it takes time and capital to make these investments. So I believe over time we definitely will bring this lithium to market. I think prices today are bad for the industry because when prices are this high, it discourages the EV industry from growing. And so I do hope, for the industry's sake, that prices do come down and become to a level that works for both the consumer as well as the producer of the material. And
you fall maybe in the middle ground between, structural deficit and oversupply, but we've seen these fears of an oversupply increase in recent weeks, as we've seen new capacity expansion plans, new announcements for new projects. I wanted to ask you, what is your short-term outlook for lithium supply and demand then? And is there a case for such an oversupply fear to that extreme?
Well, I mean, we've gone through, this is sort of the second cycle we've seen in the lithium market in 6 years. And remember what happened last time. Prices for lithium were relatively low. We were sort of starved investment. Prices took off when the first EV sort of leg up. And then all of a sudden we saw a huge rush at lithium prices. I remember the prices went from $6,000, $8,000 to I think a high of $28,000. A conference were just like this at the peak. Everyone said, oh, this is the new normal. Prices will never really go down. A lot of investment came in. There probably was quite a bit of inventory hoarding at those high prices. I believe the same thing has occurred now. And then all of a sudden, when prices started to decline, they declined quite rapidly. And then we went back down to very, very low levels, and everyone said, oh, this is it for the lithium industry, and investment stopped. And lo and behold, we went through the whole thing again. That, unfortunately, may be the way this industry works, where we will see very strong peaks and very low valleys. And so I think it's incumbent, one thing we tell clients is, make sure you're integrated into this industry. Make sure that if you're going to build a lithium facility, you have a customer, that you're integrated to grow with the industry so you know that customer is there, rather than something called merchant supplying, where I'm just going to be a low-cost provider and someone's going to take it off my hands. That was pretty dangerous the last time around and could be pretty dangerous going forward. And so despite the fact of such amazingly high prices today, I would be concerned that there could be periods of time in the future, and I can almost guarantee, of oversupply. It's just the way the industry works.
And when we are looking at the long term, I think most analysts will agree that the perspective for lithium is positive. We will need these new projects to come online. I wanted to ask you, are there any specific countries that you're watching right now? And how do you expect maybe the geopolitical dynamics of lithium to change going forward?
Well, we've seen with all these battery materials that there's a lot of political friction. Could it be cobalt in the DRC or nickel in Indonesia? As I said, the good thing about lithium, it's quite geographically diverse. You can find decent lithium deposits almost everywhere on Earth, so that's good. I think for lithium producers, it's making, when you're integrated with the cell producers, you will know, do they want carbonate? Do they want a carbonate at a 99.7, 99.8, 99.9? Do they want a hydroxide product? Or more and more, we are very bullish on lithium metal anode. Not solid state technology, but lithium metal anode. Who's going to provide those products? And those products can have amazing profit potential for the mining companies and for the cell manufacturers. And the reason for that is a lithium metal anode can double the range of a vehicle. And so that is the type of material that the automotive companies are very interested in. How is I, as a miner, be involved in that from that standpoint? So in terms of how countries that today have large lithium deposits, will they continue? That's going to be up to them. Will they be accommodative to the mining industry, or will they sort of be sort of squeezing that lithium industry? It doesn't survive, and then some other part of the world pops up as a new lithium hotbed.
And do you think investment will flow to other regions? Like we've been talking about maybe Africa coming up with lithium projects. I just wonder, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, I mean, I think you are going to see the money flow to where you can get the best return, and we're in a long-term return. So I do think, again, lithium is, you can find it anywhere. What country will be most accommodating? Which country, the flip side of that is, particularly in Europe, they want that produced ESG friendly. They don't want you to have big water usage. They don't want a big carbon footprint. So how do I work together to combine whatever the lithium asset is, be it brine, be it hard rock, be it clay, with the ESG friendly technology and that government to sort of get everything sort of work together? And so, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if one or two countries around the world that we aren't talking about at this conference do in the next 5 to 10 years become huge lithium producers. And remember, I mean, the lithium industry was a tiny little industry, 3-4% growth, 150,000 metric tons-ish. Last year we were 550,000 metric tons. This year we could be 700,000 metric tons, if not more. It could be as much as 5 million metric tons in a decade. And so massive expansion. And when you see that type of massive growth, you're going to see technological change. You're going to see different countries rise. And countries who today think they're in a great position, they may be, but they could also screw it up.
So let's talk a little bit about technology. I know that you'll be a part of a panel that is going to be discussing direct lithium extraction. What excites you the most about this technology, and what do you think are the disadvantages that maybe needs to overcome in the coming years?
Yeah, I mean, DLE or DLP, there's two different technologies. DLP to me today is very interesting. It's a molecular recognition technology that literally just flows brine over this. No real chemicals being used, not much water being used. If this technology works, and there's a number of big pilots going on in the world, that would really change things to the positive. As to DLE technologies, you have either membranes or you have absorbent technologies, or combination therefore. How do they keep their absorbent chemical level low? How do they dispose of the brines after they've gone through the process? I think there's some challenges that the industry needs to address in terms of making local communities comfortable with how these are working, if they can get them to work at all. And there's probably several dozen pilots working around the world. I'm very curious in my panel, and among others, how these pilots are working, how they're seeing the technology. And it was interesting to me when I was talking to the panelists over the past week the questions they wanted me to ask, and they all were all about ESG, all about how they can change the perception of this industry. And I think that's one thing. I get very concerned when I see people going after the nickel industry or after absolutely critical metals. We can't do it without it. It's not coming from recycled material. There's no material to recycle. It has to come from mines. And so how does industry and environmentalists and governments work together to get done, because it cannot not be done. And so that's hopefully gatherings like this sort of spread the word about the good stuff we're doing, how we can make things better, and overall how can we get huge amounts of production increase.
And are you seeing money flow into these new technologies or the development of these new technologies to scale them up?
The money coming into this industry is astronomical. I've never seen anything like this in my almost 30 years of looking at finance. There are funds that call up all the time. We have $10 billion, we have $20 billion. We're just looking for investments. I think because you've seen some of these equities in the public market not do so well, these SPACs, for example, there's a bit more reticence to make these investments, but the money is still there and it's looking. It's just looking for what's going to be the future. And that's the single biggest question we get. I know where everything is today. I know everything is going to change. How do I make my investment that it can change with the battery technology? And I make an investment in something, and then 5 years from now, that material is just no longer used.
All right. And another big theme at this conference is battery recycling. When do you think it will start playing a key role for the space? And what type of companies do you think are better positioned to take advantage of this growing area?
Okay, the bad news is we can't recycle a battery today. We can recycle parts of the battery. We can get the metals out. We can get the copper and the aluminum out. We are very bad at things like electrolyte and separators and even the anode material. We are so-so on lithium. The good news is it takes about 10 years. A battery will last about 10 years. So we looked 10 years ago, there were only very, very few EVs in the market, and so the recycled material availability today is de minimis. Most of the material that's recycled comes from cell plants themselves, and that will change over time. For those who think recycling is going to be the panacea for our needs, that won't happen in probably 15 or 20 years. It's just the amount of material and the growth of the industry. It's sort of simple math. I think a lot of the companies, and I may hear every single week by a new recycling technology. It's crazy. Which ones work? Which ones can have the lowest cost, the best ESG? It's going to be interesting. But it's it's almost like when and I'll use this strange analogy, like when we were trying to learn how to fly, and you look at all those old films of things flapping their wings and things going up and down, all these crazy ideas. We're almost at this idea. We don't know how these batteries can really be recycled in their entirety, efficiently, and a low ESG standpoint. And so I myself am curious, and I love hearing about all these new technologies. We'll hear about them tomorrow. But it is something also that it's a big challenge for the industry. It's just not as simple as you put in a battery on one side, and out comes all these beautiful crystals to be made into a new battery. That looks great in YouTube videos. It hasn't worked in reality yet.
All right, and my last question for you today, aside from lithium, which other key EV raw material interests you the most, and which one do you think has the biggest challenges ahead?
The one that interests me the most is manganese. Manganese can be used as a displacement to nickel. Unfortunately, outside of China, no one can make a manganese-grade battery material. For pilot plants being worked on in the world, it's very, very challenging. But manganese, we have seen a commercialization of a high manganese battery. S-Volt in China has a 75% nickel, 25% manganese, 0% coal battery with very good energy density and relatively low cost compared to high nickel batteries. And I think manganese will be the next big metal that we'll be talking about into the future. What challenges, to me, the most interesting challenge in the world today is ocean mining. We're hearing more and more at these conferences, companies who are doing ocean mining, environmental questions, and how that all works out to me is going to be fascinating. There are nearly endless amounts, and we environmentally responsibly mine those is going to be a very large question.
All right, Ken, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Thanks a lot, Priscilla.